Hey guys, Matt here for this weekend's rock videos. I say videos plural. I'm going to try and do two today, but Black Sabbath will for sure be my first one. I've done a couple hard rock videos before with Deep Purple and Aerosmith. Let's say Sabbath is the first real metal band that I'm going to tackle. I know a lot of people consider Deep Purple to be metal, and I probably do too in the early '70s because they were rocking as hard as virtually anybody else. But Sabbath is the first real metal band if you want to consider how we view heavy metal today. Now, certain writers, I'm going to use Martin Popoff as an example. Martin Popoff, I think, is the preeminent metal writer. He's a Canadian. He's written more books on heavy metal bands than anybody. This is a little crooked, isn't it? That I can think of. Guys like Popoff will tell you that true metal bands cannot have too much, or if any, blues in their music. Now, there are bluesy Black Sabbath songs, but for the most part, they have a more European approach to it. Deep Purple, well, of course, Blackmore has plenty. He has like classical aspirations, European classical music in his playing sometimes, but there's more blues, I think, in Deep Purple and Rainbow than there is in Sabbath. I don't know. I mean, that's again, I'm just this is low hanging fruit when it comes to who is metal and who is not. But anyways, Sabbath. People say the first Black Sabbath album is the birth of heavy metal. Now, of course, there are antecedents leading up to this. The two Zeppelin albums in '69, I don't know, Blue Cheer. I'm not going to say something like Cream or the Yardbirds, even though that's definitely, stepping stones to metal, because that's too psychedelic, all right? Real metal is not going to be psych, all right? So, this is, this doom and gloom thing that Sabbath all but patented was not something that was unique only to them. There was a band called Coven around at the time who were doing kind of like satanic type of lyrics. This album, this is the CD. The track listing on here is a bit different than the original UK album. I'll go over the songs because this is such a mega album that, yeah, I mean, I got to go over every track. Black Sabbath, that first song, wow, it's like watching a horror movie. I mean, that's one of the greatest heavy metal songs ever. I think it just feels evil or something. The Wizard just really kicks ass. Blue Oyster Cult used that riff for Cities on Flame with Rock and Roll. Another great song, and I'll do a BOC video one day for you. But The Wizard, man, it's just incredible. Behind the Wall of Sleep, and then NIB, which is Nativity in Black. Wonderful stuff. Evil Woman is a cover version of the American band Crow. They did Evil Woman first. Pretty good if you ever hear their version. I downloaded it. I think Ike and Tina Turner covered that song too. Sleeping Village, The Warning. Just epic stuff, man. I mean, this album was meant to be heard at night. I think virtually all these albums were, right? And then Wicked World is on there too. You see it's the last cut. That was on the album. That was on the UK album. That was a B-side. Wonderful song though, fits right in. But Black Sabbath, 1970, couldn't be better unless you're talking Paranoid. Now this is in the minds of many the ultimate Black Sabbath album, and I'll tell you why. It's got their three most famous songs, at least here in America: War Pigs, Iron Man, and the title track. Those are the only songs I heard growing up in the '70s on the radio, probably even in the '80s. Sabbath were like a legendary band for me growing up, more than they were a popular band. I didn't really know any hardcore Sabbath fans growing up. Now it seems everybody, pays their dues to Black Sabbath, especially when grunge was a big thing 30 years ago, because a lot of those bands definitely had Sabbath roots. But They're a group who has grown in the minds of many in terms of estimation. But Paranoid, that's a 5-star class. I mean, if you think the first Black Sabbath album is great, and I do, cut for cut, there probably is no better Black Sabbath album. War Pigs, fantastic. Paranoid, fantastic. Planet Caravan's a great kind of ballad for them, kind of a slow, druggy, almost psych song, right? Iron Man, couldn't. I remember when I was in 6th grade camp in the 70s, we went away, our school, and we camped in the mountains for, it was a while, days, a week, with another school. And we stayed in cabins, and our counselor at the time, who was there, there was always an adult in charge of us, would wake us up in the morning by blasting Iron Man. It was probably the first time I ever heard it. So, 6th grade, that would have been like 76, 77. Anyways, Electric Funeral, great. Hand of Doom, Rat Salad is the Bill Ward, the drum solo. And then Fairies Wear Boots is a fantastic closer. It's not a wasted minute. I also have the quad mix from the 70s that Rhino just put out, I don't know, a year or so ago. This is the only Sabbath surround sound album that I have. So, couldn't be better. The way that Zeppelin's first 2 albums kind of dominated 1969 in terms of hard rock is the way that the first 2 Sabbath albums dominate 1970. All right? Okay, this is Master of Reality. I kept this little, oh no, I didn't keep it. I put this little plastic thing on because it comes with a cardboard cover. The lyrics are on there. Another classic. I'm gonna say it, 5-star classic album. Sweet Leaf, about the joys of marijuana. After Forever. Embryo is a short little intro tune to Children of the Grave, which is another major, Sabbath number. That kind of has the beginning, the music to Children of the Grave is like Blondie's Call Me. Anyways, Orchid is an intro to Lord of this World, and then Solitude and Into the Void. I mean, the thing about these early Sabbath albums from 70 to 75 is that they're all so good. You could claim any of them as being the best album that Sabbath ever made, and who could argue with you? Because it's totally subjective. It doesn't need to be Paranoid, just because that has the famous songs. Cut for cut, this is probably just as good. But what I like even better than Master of Reality is Volume 4. Every song on these early Sabbath albums is great. They'd have like little instrumental interludes, which kind of, became like entrance ways to the next track, but you didn't really take seriously. But any song where they're rocking out and Ozzy is singing is a classic Sabbath number. Wheels of Confusion, Tomorrow's Dream, Changes was a bit different for them. That's a popular Sabbath number. It's all right. That's Ozzy. I'm going through changes. By the way, Ozzy didn't write the lyrics. It took me a while to really realize that because, you just think, oh, the singer writes the lyrics. No, Geezer Butler wrote the vast majority of the lyrics. It was rare, actually, during these days that Ozzy would write anything. Supernaut is epic. Why didn't the radio play that? That's Frank Zappa's favorite Sabbath song. Snowblind, Cornucopia. Laguna Sunrise is a nice little Tony acoustic piece. St. Vitus Dance, Under the Sun. As good as any album that they had made at this point. They made the first 3 albums in London. This was their LA cocaine album. It almost destroyed them. This town is Sin City, folks. Come here at your own risk. But there was no better hard rockin' band in terms of metal anyway in 72. Although 72 was the year of Machine Head. Yeah, I'm going to tell you, folks, I prefer Machine Head to Volume 4. Plus, Made in Japan came out that same year. '73 is Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, another classic. I mean, I'm running out of superlatives. I'm running out of adjectives. These albums are all virtually equally as good. This one has a bit more, there's a bit more texture. Rick Wakeman, yes, Rick Wakeman actually plays a little, minimalist keyboards on a track or two. The title track is epic Sabbath, probably my top 10 Sabbath songs. A National Acrobat, Fluff, could be Fluff. Sabracadabra, that song's about sex, isn't it? They rarely wrote about sex. Killing Yourself to Live is great. Who Are You Looking For Today? And then Spiral Architect. I went through a phase where this was my favorite Sabbath album. So, but now, as I've told you, I probably like Volume 4 better than this. But picking a fave Sabbath album of these first 6, it's an exercise in subjectivity. All right. Okay, Sabotage is in the minds of many the last of the classic era Ozzy albums, and I'm okay. I'll go with that. This is they went back to England. Well, they had done that with Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath in London to record this. Hole in the Sky, one of Sabbath's best ever songs. Don't Start Too Late, Ship on the Universe, another classic. I know I'm using that word too much, right? Megalomania is one of those really long ones, along with The Writ. The Writ, that's one that Ozzy wrote the lyrics to, right? Because they're having troubles with their management or their manager at the time. Ozzy did get off his butt and write that one. Thrill of It All is great. Superstar. Am I Going Insane? That's okay. It's like Changes. It's so different from Black Sabbath that it has its fans. If you ever got the double disc Black Sabbath compilation from the '70s, oh wow, why can't I think of it? Folks, I've damaged my mind with chemicals too much in my life to. Oh well, I'm not going to have these embarrassing pauses, but anyways, people had it in the '70s. It's the only double LP Sabbath compilation that was out then, and if memory serves, and I've just shown you how bad my memory is, I think that Am I Going Insane was the only song from Sabotage on that record. Weird. And I think half of that record was just stuff from like 1970, the first 2 albums. But having said all that, though, you can't make a bad Sabbath compilation using 70 to 75 material. So it's an excellent album regardless, as is this. Okay. I don't have a single CD of Technical Ecstasy, so I have this super deluxe edition. They have super deluxe editions of other Sabbath albums too, but there's no surround sound content or video or anything, so I didn't buy them. Only reason I bought this one was because I didn't have a copy of Technical Ecstasy. I did not grow up with this album. I like it though. It's not classic in the way that the 70 to 75 stuff is, but I liken this album much to say Zeppelin's Presence, which came out in '76, same year as this. Both really good albums, just not as classic as what had occurred before. If you want to get this, it's 4 CDs, plenty of stuff. As I said, nothing in surround, no video, no Blu-ray or DVD, all just CDs. But it's all good. There is the album, there is the new mix of the album, there's outtakes and alternative mixes, and then there's live stuff. And like I said, there are deluxe editions of other Sabbath albums. Stephen Wilson, I think, does the new mixes on some of these. Anyways, Backstreet Kids is pretty good. All Moving Parts, that's about like a trans president or something like that. Dirty Women, there were a lot. Oh, this one was recorded in Miami, and it just sparked my memory because Dirty Women was about prostitutes that they saw there. Anyways, a good album, Technical Ecstasy, without being brilliant. What most people will tell you is the weakest of the original Ozzy era Sabbath records is Never Say Die. This is a Japanese disc. I have the Obi elsewhere, but yeah, okay. This is the worst one. It's not bad. It came out in '78, but it's not even as good as Technical Ecstasy. I like the title track, Never Say Die. I like looking over the songs here. I like Shockwave. I like Air Dance. You know, there's nothing on here that I would actually call bad. It's just, you know, it's just not great. But this is still a better album than a lot of albums by 80s metal artists who were widely praised, in my estimation. That's how much I like Black Sabbath. Okay, so Ozzy's out. They fire him. You know, the making of a lot of these albums I just showed you was fueled by alcohol consumption and drugs and, you know, internal squabbling. So Sabbath were never a band of, you know, mates who just all got along, you know, as a lot of groups are. In 1980, they had picked up Ronnie James Dio, fresh out of Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow. Love Dio as a singer. Heaven and Hell. This is a double disc set. People complain online about the sound quality. I don't mind the sound quality at all of this. This is another great album, virtually a classic. Now, in the early 80s, you know, that metal had changed. You had the new wave of British heavy metal groups upping the ante. You had Iron Maiden, for Christ's sakes. Judas Priest were at their peak. But Sabbath came along, who hadn't made a classic album in 5 years, and boom, they do it again. Ozzy's also big time in 1980 with Randy Rhoads. I'll get to his solo career in a second. This video, by the way, is only going to go up through 1983. Another lovely record with way more hits than misses. I'll show you that. I don't know how well you can see it. Neon Nights, epic, great, pounding, you know, just out of the starting gate, running at full gallop, Sabbath. Children of the Sea is another classic Sabbath song. Lady Evil had to be one that Ronnie came up with, right? Heaven and Hell is one of the greatest Black Sabbath songs ever. Wishing Well, Die Young, Walk Away, Lonely as the Wind. No, there's not a bad song on here. All right, can't big this one up enough. Virtually as good, just hair's difference, is The Mob Rules. In fact, that song, The Mob Rules, the title track, which is also in a slightly different mix on the heavy metal soundtrack from 1981, you know, from the cartoon movie. I like that song as much as I like anything on Heaven and Hell. This virtually, I don't know if you can see it, two discs, virtually as good. I can barely read that. Turn Up the Night, Voodoo, Sign of the Southern Cross is epic Sabbath. I can't read that. I'm not even going to try. The Mob Rules, already talked about that. Country Girl, Slipping Away, Falling Off the Edge of the World was another totally major Sabbath song, over and over. They were, in 80 and 81, with Ronnie James Dio, because these are the initial two albums that Dio did with the band before he quit and then came back years later. These albums are virtually as good as the Ozzy Osbourne ones with Randy Rhoads. Depending upon like what day you get me, I don't know which ones I prefer, the two Sabbath albums or the two Randy Rhoads albums. You certainly heard the songs from the Ozzy albums on the radio and out and about in public more than you heard these songs, but these are hella good, hella great records. The two albums with Dio. Okay, in 83, there wasn't a Black Sabbath album. In 82, take it out of my Ziploc baggie here. Born Again. This will be the last Sabbath album that I talk about. I remember seeing that in the record stores at the time and thinking, how can they get away with that satanic thing. So they got Ian Gillan from Deep Purple on board. This album kind of, gets mixed reviews, but I think it's solid, and that's why I'm going to end with this. It's the last really good, I think anyway, Black Sabbath album for quite some time. Ian's voice isn't, what it was in the 70s. He didn't hold on to his voice as long as Ozzy did. Trash is good. Stonehenge. I mentioned Stonehenge being on the cover of an Aerosmith album when I did my Aerosmith video. These hard rock or metal bands couldn't stay away from that Stonehenge image, and I think that's why it's used in the This Is Spinal Tap movie. Disturbing the Priest, The Dark. Zero the Hero was really good. I like that one. Digital Bitch, Born Again, Hotline, and Sleep at Charm. Cannot read that. Anyways, good, if, while not being great. And it's just cool to hear Ian sing with Sabbath. He would go right from this, the shows and the album, to getting back with Deep Purple for the excellent Perfect Strangers album, which I do recommend. All right, doing well with the time here, just barely over 21 minutes. Let's talk about Ozzy Osbourne briefly, because this video is only going to go through 83. All right, Blizzard of Oz. Blizzard of Oz. Oh, you can't see that. That's another classic metal album, folks. I mean, he was just... The 80s had a lot of comebacks, Ozzy being one of the first, because people weren't really talking about Ozzy Osbourne in the late 70s. They weren't really talking about Sabbath either. So it was really cool as a fan, to see both Ozzy and Black Sabbath come back in a big way in 1980. He's got Randy Rhoads here, who is the LA phenom, who does remind me a bit of Eddie Van Halen. Eddie said that as well. Came from Quiet Riot, more of a European classical, influenced guitar player than Van Halen was, for instance. Lots of great songs. See the way that they put these in a spiral? Hope I can read them for you. I'm gonna look at the. Oh my God. I Don't Know. Love it. Crazy Train. Classic. Goodbye to Romance is a nice little ballad. D is one of Randy's instrumentals. Think about his mom. Suicide Solution is another classic Ozzy number. Revelation, Steal Away the Night. That's it. A great album. And Randy's playing it was phenomenal. He was the next guitar player to really make a splash among, people like me, hard rock guys. After Van Halen. And there really wouldn't be anyone who would be that influential in the hard rock or metal, really, genre. Well, there was Steve Vai, there was Yngwie Malmsteen, so yeah, there was. But Randy had his 15 minutes, and he is beloved by those of us who care to remember. 81, Diary of a Madman. This was out, at the same year as The Mob Rules. Another classic. I might prefer Blizzard of Oz by a hair to Diary, but they're both so good that, again, it's like comparing Mob Rules to Heaven and Hell. It's if you want to argue for either one, I'm not going to. Over the Mountain is great. Flying High Again is classic Ozzy, all over the radio. You Can't Kill Rock and Roll, Believer, Little Dolls. Wow. Tonight, Sado, Diary of a Madman. Diary. You know what? I miss Mr. Crowley. That was on this album, so I must have missed a page when I was reading the song titles. That's a classic Ozzy song, too. Or was it on here? Oh, well. Anyways, in 83, since I went through Born Again, I will take you through the 83 Ozzy album. This is... oh, God. Bark at the Moon. That's a great song. He's got Jakey Lee here as a guitar player replacing Randy. Oh, I forgot to mention that in 82, there was a live Ozzy album called Speak of the Devil. I don't have it. It's not bad. He does Sabbath numbers on there. One asks why he felt he had to do that when one could just go back and play the the Black Sabbath tunes that Ozzy sang originally. But at that point in time, there was no live Black Sabbath album that you could commercially buy that wasn't a bootleg. So, you know, maybe it did fill a void. It's not bad. And I actually remember hearing some songs on the radio. But this was the first real, you know, comeback, or not comeback, but, you know, progression, pick up the pace after Randy died. It's pretty good, Bark at the Moon. Jake kind of sounds like Randy, just not quite, you know, he's not brilliant. The songs on here are good for the most part without being great. Like I said, I love Bark at the Moon. You're No Different. Now You See It, Now You Don't. Rock and Roll Rebel, bit of a cliche. Center of Eternity, So Tired. I mean, you know, all these songs are pretty good. Slow Down, Waiting for Darkness, Spiders in the Night as a bonus track. He would continue, you know, I mean, right for the rest of the decade in the 80s, being this metal god. I mean, everyone liked Ozzy. They played his songs on the radio more than they did Black Sabbath. But I lost interest after a while. I mean, by the early 90s, I wasn't buying Ozzy records in the late 80s. And here's the last thing that I'll show you. In the late 80s, 87, I guess, we finally got a live Ozzy album with Randy Rhoads, just as tribute. Was this a double vinyl LP? See, I mean, I only had the CD. I can't remember. It's good. I mean, some could say that Randy really shined on the you know, stage in a concert setting. I love the studio recordings too, but you know I like live albums, so I'm going to show you this. So, Black Sabbath / Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite, I don't know who might, or what, if I had to pick a favorite metal band of all time, Black Sabbath, it'd be just difficult to say, you know, what's a better metal band than Sabbath. Judas Priest, I'm a big Judas Priest fan, but no, Priest don't have the amount of totally classic 5-star albums that Sabbath do. That run, right, as I've already said, from 70 to 75, what's that? That's 6 albums, right? 2 in 70, 71, 72, 73, and 75. There wasn't one in 74. That's better than any 6-run album by any other heavy metal band, right? So, yeah, what the hell? I'm going to say Black Sabbath are my favorite metal band. Hope they're yours too. Matt Wilson signing off.